Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to the Corbettmaths practice questions on square numbers and square roots. If you need any extra help on square numbers, squaring numbers, and also square roots, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to the videos and worksheet section and scroll down to video numbers 226, 227, and 228, there's dedicated video tutorials there to help you. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, so let's have a look at question number 1. So question number 1, we've been given a list of numbers 2, 6, 11, 14, 16, 18, 24 and 25. And part A, we've been asked to write down the square numbers. So we want to write down the square numbers from this list. So let's write down our square numbers anyway. So let's list our square numbers. And we need to go up to at least 25. So 1 squared, 1 times 1 is 1. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. And 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. And so we've written the first 5 square numbers. We don't need to go any further because we've gone up to the biggest number in the list. And let's write down the square numbers in the list. So is 2 a square number? No. 6? No. 11? No. 14? No. 16. 16 is a square number, so let's write that one down. 18? No. 24? No. And 25? Yes. So our square numbers in that list are 16 and 25. Okay, part B. Part B says write down the square root of 36. So we want to find the square root of 36. So the square root of 36. And the square root of 36 is equal to 6 because 6 times 6 is equal to 36. So the square root of 36 is 6, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 2. So question number 2, we've been given another list of numbers, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, and 52. And we've been asked to write down from the list the square number. So we want to write down the square number in this list. So let's list our square numbers. 1 squared, 1 times 1 is 1. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. Now we obviously need to go a bit further because we need a bigger number. 5 times 5, 5 squared is 25. 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. And 7 squared, 7 times 7 is 49. So that means that 49 is the square number in that list. And the next square number, if we were just to check, 8 times 8 is 64. So the square number in that list is 49. So let's write it down, 49. And that's it. So it's very important to know your square numbers and to know them off by heart. So knowing that the square numbers are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, and so on. Okay, let's go to the next question, question number 3. So question number 3, we've been asked to write down the value of 4 squared. So little 2 means squared. So 4 squared means 4 times 4. And 4 times 4, 4 multiplied by itself, is equal to 16. So that's it. So 4 squared is 16. So the answer is 16. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 4. Okay, so question number 4, it's got 5 parts, A, B, C, D, and E. And we've been asked to write down the value of 3 squared. So 3 squared means 3 multiplied by itself, 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. So 3 squared is 9. Okay, the next one, B. B says 7 squared, so that's 7 with a little 2 above it, squared. And that means 7 multiplied by itself, 7 times 7. And 7 times 7 is 49, so the answer would be 49. Okay, next, C. C, we've got 8 squared, so that's 8 multiplied by itself, 8 times 8. And 8 times 8 is equal to 64. So that means that 8 squared is 64, and that's it. Okay, next, D. D, we've been asked to work out 10 squared, so that's 10 squared, or 10 multiplied by itself, so 10 times 10. And 10 times 10 is 100, so 10 squared is 100. Okay, and our last part, E. E asks us to work out 12 squared, so that's 12 multiplied by itself, 12 times 12. And 12 times 12 is 144, so knowing your times tables is very important, particularly with square numbers. So 12 times 12 is 144, so 12 squared is 144. So 3 squared is 9, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 10 squared is 100, and 12 squared is 144. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 5. Okay, so question number 5, we've been given this box and we've been asked to circle all the square numbers. So we want to circle all the square numbers in that box. So the square numbers are 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, and 10 squared is 100. And I don't need to go any further because the biggest number in the box is 100. And actually, we can circle that one straight away. It's a square number. So let's look for the other square numbers. 2, no. 4, yes. 36, yes. 54, no. 60, no. 52, no. And 16, yes. So the square numbers in that box are 16, 4, 36, and 100. 52, 2, 60, and 54 are not square numbers. So question number 6, we've been asked to work out part A, the square root of 81, B, the square root of 1, C, the square root of 121, and D, the square root of 0. So this symbol is a square root symbol, and it means what number do you multiply by itself to get 81? Well, we know that 9 times 9 is equal to 81. So that means that the square root of 81, the square root of 81 is equal to 9. So our answer would be 9. Okay, B, the square root of 1. Well, 1 times 1 is equal to 1, so the square root of 1 would be equal to 1. C is the square root of 121. Well, we know 11 times 11. 11 multiplied by 11 is equal to 121. So that means the square root of 121 would be 11. And finally, D is the square root of 0. So what number do you multiply by itself to get 0? Well, it'll be 0. 0 times 0 is 0. So the square root of 0 is 0. So that's it. So A, the square root of 81 is 9. B, the square root of 1 is 1. C, the square root of 121 is 11. And D, the square root of 0 is 0. Okay, so question number 7, we've been asked to work out 19 squared. So that means 19 multiplied by 19. Now, if this was a calculator question, I would grab a calculator and I would work out 19 times 19 or press 19 squared, but it's a non-calculator question. So I'm going to need to use the column method of multiplication, so 19 multiplied by 19. Actually, you can use any method of multiplication that you want to, as long as it works, but I'm going to use the column method. So I'm going to do 19 multiplied by 19. So 9 times 9 is 81, so put a 1 down and carry an 8. And 9 times 1 is equal to 9 plus 8 is 17. So if we do 19 times 9, that's 171. Now we're going to do 19 times 10. So let's put the 0 down. 1 times 9 is 9, and 1 times 1 is 1. Now we just need to add these two together. So 1 plus 0 is 1. 7 plus 9 is 16, so put a 6 down and carry a 1. And 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. So that means that 19 multiplied by 19 is 361. So that means that 19 squared is 361. Okay, let's take our next question, question number 8. Now, question numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11, they're all calculator questions, so you can use a calculator for these questions. And we've been asked in question 8 to calculate 2.4 squared. So we need to work out 2.4 multiplied by 2.4. So we can get our calculator, and we could do it by typing in 2.4, so 2.4 multiplied by 2.4. So we could actually type it in as a multiplication, 2.4 multiplied by 2.4, because it's 2.4 squared, so we're just doing 2.4 multiplied by itself. And if we do that, if we press equals, we get that's equal to, now mine is coming up as a fraction, 144 over 25, so depending on the model of calculator you got, it may come up as a decimal number, or it may come up as a fraction. I tend to write these answers as decimals, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press the format button, and then press decimal, and then it comes up as 5.76. So 2.4 multiplied by 2.4 is 5.76. So let's write that down. 5.76, 5.76. So I just worked out 2.4 multiplied by 2.4. Now, if I was doing this question, I probably wouldn't type in 2.4 multiplied by 2.4. I tend to, whenever I'm using the calculator, want to press as few buttons as possible. So I would type in 2.4 squared, and your calculator will have a squared button. As you can see here, this little box with a little 2 above it, that's the squared button. So we could type in 2.4 and then press that button, and it comes up as 2.4 squared. And then we could press equals. Again, it comes up as a fraction, so if we press format and press down to decimal, we can then get the answer is 5.76. So the answer is 5.76. So we could use that squared button as well, this one here, the squared button, so 2.4 squared. And that's what I would type in if I was using this calculator to work out 2.4 squared. So that's it. Now I just want to mention that if you've got another type of calculator, so if I had this type of calculator and I wanted to work out 2.4 squared, I could type in 2.4 multiplied by 2.4. And when I press equals, it comes up as a fraction again. Now in this calculator, to change that fraction to a decimal, there's a little button here, SD, and if you press that, it'll change it to 5.76 for you. So that's the button to change from the fraction to the decimal on this calculator. And also, if you want to type it in as 2.4 squared, you press 2.4, but the square button on this calculator is an X with a little 2 above it, the squared button there. So you type in 2.4 squared and then press equals. And then it comes up again as a fraction, press that little SD button and it comes up as 5.76. So depending on the mode of your calculator, you may press slightly different buttons for squared or to change from a fraction to a decimal. But you should be able to work it out. And it's important to know how to work it out. So if you need any advice on that, feel free to ask your teacher or ask maybe your parent at home just just how you would type in squared or how to change a fraction to decimal on your calculator. And also sometimes you might be doing this on a non-scientific calculator, so you might have a bit of a basic calculator or even your phone calculator, and if you wanted to type in 2.4 squared, there's usually a squared button on even basic calculators. So if you type in 2.4 and there should be a squared button on the calculator somewhere, but alternatively you could type it in full, 2.4 multiplied by 2.4, and then that'll give you your answer. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 9. So question number 9, we've got calculate the square root of 62.41. So what we want to find here is what number do we multiply by itself to get 62.41. So there's actually a square root button on the calculator as well. We don't want to use trial and error to try and work this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our calculator, and we want to find the square root of 62.41. So in this calculator, the square root button is this one here, the little square root button here. It's the little square root symbol with the little box beneath it. So if you press that button and type in 62.41 and then press equals, we get that's equal to 79 over 10. Again, I want that as a decimal number, so I'm going to press the format button, and then I'm going to go down and press decimal, and it comes up as 7.9. So that means that the square root of 62.41 is equal to 7.9. So I'm going to write down 7.9, and that's it. And again, even if you've got a non-scientific calculator, there will be a square root button on it. So you could type in 62.41 and then press the square root button, and it would come up as 7.9. And again, if you've got a calculator like this, which has got the buttons in a slightly different position, again, the square root button is there. It's that square root symbol with the box beneath it. Type in 62.41. And then press equals, and again it comes up as a fraction, and then you press that little SD button and it comes up as 7.9, and that's it. So question number 10, we've been asked to work out 7.9 squared. So again, we could type in 7.9 to multiply by 7.9, and 7.9 multiplied by 7.9 would give you your answer. But I'm going to press that squared button because I like to press it, it's a bit quicker. So if we want to work out 7.9 squared, I'm going to press 7.9 and then the squared button, this little button here. And if I press it, it comes up as 7.9 squared. And again, I press equals, and it comes up as 6,241 over 100. So then I press format, scroll down, press decimal, and it comes up as 62.41. So 7.9 squared is 62.41. And actually looking at our answers, question 9 and question, that if the square root of 62.41 is 7.9, the 7.9 squared would be 62.41. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 11. Okay, so question number 11, we've been asked to work out the square root of 0.1156. So we want to work out the square root of 0.1156. So let's get our calculator, press the square root button, so this button here, and as you can see on our display, it's there. 0.1156, so we've got the square root of 0.1156 there shown on the display. Press equals. It comes up as 17 over 50, so we press format, press down, decimal, equals 0.34. So the answer would be 0.34, because 0.34 multiplied by 0.34 would be 0.1156. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 12. So question number 12, it says circle the number that is double a square number. So we don't want to circle a square number, well, maybe a square number, maybe the double a square number gives you another square number, but here we've been asked to circle the number that is double a square number. So if we look at these numbers, one of them is double a square number. There's a few different ways in which we could approach this. One approach is to list our square numbers and then double them and see if we can get one of these numbers in the list. So our square numbers are 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 4 is 16. So there are our square numbers, the start of our square numbers, our list of square numbers. And I'm going to double them. Double 1 is 2, double 4 is 8, double 9 is 18. Oh, that's great, that's in the list. And double 16 is 32. So here, 18. The number 18 is double a square number because 3 squared is 9 and double 9 is 18. So 18 is double a square number. Another approach that you could have used in this question is actually just half these numbers. And if you have 12, you get 6. That's not a square number. If you have 14, you get 7. That's not a square number. If you have 16, that's 8. That's not a square number. And if you have 18, that's 9. And 9 is a square number. So that approach would work as well. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 13. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 13. So question number 13 says, Priya says that 50 is a square number. Show that Priya is not correct. Okay, so we know our square numbers. Our square numbers are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, and so on. As you can see, 50 is not a square number. And to explain that, I'm going to explain that 7 times 7 is equal to 49, and 8 times 8 is equal to 64. Therefore, 50 is not a square number. And that's it. I've just explained that because 7 times 7 is 49 and 8 times 8 is 64, 50 is not a square number, so Priya is not correct. Okay, let's look at our next question. Question number 14. Megan says that when you square root a number, the answer is always smaller. So she's wrong. Okay, so when you square root a number, Megan's saying that the answer is always smaller. So for instance, if you were to square root 9, the square root of 9 is 3, and that is smaller. So that one sort of, suggests that maybe Megan's onto something. However, if we do the square root of 1, well, that's saying what number do we multiply by itself to get 1? And that's equal to 1. So if we square root 1, the answer is 1. And that's the same as what you started with. So if you square root that number, it doesn't get smaller, it stays the same. And actually that works with 0 as well. If we square root 0, 0 times 0 is 0, so the square root of 0 is 0. So that one doesn't get smaller either. And actually, if you were to square root something such as a quarter, 0.25, the square root of a quarter, 0.25, is actually 0.5 because 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25. So that one actually gets bigger. So if you square root 1, it doesn't get smaller, it stays the same. If you square root 0, again, it stays the same. If you square root a 0 point number, it'll actually get bigger. So they're all examples to show that Megan's incorrect. So let's explain that. And that's it. I've just explained that the examples above show that Megan is wrong. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 15. So question number 15 says to write down a square number that is greater than 30 but less than 50. So there's two choices here. We could actually write down 36 because 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 6 is equal to 36. So that's one square number that's greater than 30 but less than 50. Alternatively, we could actually write down 49 because 7 times 7 is equal to 49. So we could write down 36 or 49. Now the question says to write down a square number greater than 30 but less than 50. So just choose one of those, write down 36 or write down 49. But I'm just writing down both of them because obviously I want to make sure that you know that if you write down 36 that's right, or if you write down 49 that's right. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 16. Okay, so the next question, question number 16, says arrange these in order starting with the smallest. So we've got 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 9. The square root of 100, well 10 times 10 is 100, so that's going to be 10, the square root of 100 is 10. 4 squared, that's 4 times 4, 4 times 4 is 16. And finally the square root of 80. Now the square root of 80 is actually a decimal number, and this is a non-calculator question. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to consider a square number near that. So I'm going to do the square root of 81. And the square root of 81 is 9. So that means the square root of 80 is going to be less than 9. So here we want to put these in order, so that's going to be less than 9. So we've been asked to put these in order starting with the smallest. So the smallest will be this one because it's a less than 9, the square root of 80, the square root of 80. Then we've got 3 squared. So that's the smallest, then that's the next smallest. Then the square root of 100 is 10, the square root of 100. And then finally 4 squared is the biggest. 4 squared, that's 16, so that's the biggest. So we put them in order starting with the smallest. So we've got the square root of 80, that's less than 9. 3 squared, that's 9. Square root of 100, that's 10. And 4 squared, that's 16. And that's it. So question number 17 says, William is thinking of two numbers. He's thinking of two numbers, and they're both square numbers that are greater than 1. And the sum of the numbers is 100. Write down the two numbers. So they're both square numbers, and they have a sum of 100. That means they add together to 100. So we want to find two square numbers that when we add them together, we get 100. So let's write down our square numbers. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. So I've written those numbers down. Now you should know those off by heart, your square numbers, at least up to 144. So they're greater than 1, so obviously it's not going to be 1. They add together to be 100, so it's not going to be 100 and 0. So we're left with these numbers here. These are square numbers between 1 and 100, and we want to pick two of them that add together to be 100. So 4 would need to be added together with 96. That's not a square number, so it can't be 4. 9 and 91 would make 100, so it's not 9. 16, well, that'd be 84. No. 25, well, 25 and 75 is 100, so it's not that one. 36 plus 64 is 100, so 36 and 64. So the two square numbers that William thought of must have been 36 and 64, because 36 plus 64 is equal to 100, and they're square numbers between 1 and 100. And just to check, we'd have to add 51 to 49 to make 100, so no. And we'd have to add 19 to 81 to make 100, no. So the two square numbers would have to be 36 and 64. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 18. So question number 18 is a calculator question, and it says that Mr. Jenkins is tiling a square floor. So he's tiling a square floor, and he uses 196 square tiles. So he's using square tiles to tile the square floor. And the question says, work out how many tiles are in each row. So I'm just going to do a little sketch. So that's a little sketch of a square floor, and he's using square tiles. So obviously whenever you're tiling a floor, you're going to have rows of tiles. So you'd have these rows of tiles going across the floor, and obviously you'd have the columns of tiles as well, so it'd look like this. And he's tiling this floor. Now, there's 196 tiles. And because it's a square floor and they're square tiles, what's going to happen is there'll be the same number of rows as columns. So that means that 196 would have to be a square number. So on our calculator, let's work out the square root of 196 and see what we get. So if we get our calculator and turn it on and do the square root, so press the square root button, so this one here, and type in 196 and press equals, we get that's equal to 14. So 14 times 14 is equal to 164. So that must mean there's 14 columns and 14 rows, because if you had 14 rows of 14 tiles, that'll be 14 times 14 is 196. So the question says work out how many tiles are in each row. Well, there's 14 rows of 14 tiles, so there's 14 tiles in each row, and that's it. Okay, let's look at question number 19. So question number 19 says, write down an even square number greater than 1,000. Now it's a calculator question, so that's fantastic. So what we just need to do is find a square number that's even, that's greater than 1,000. So we could choose a number such as 50 and do 50 squared on our calculator and see what we get. And if we get our calculator and type in 50 squared, so 50, and then the squared button, and press equals, that's equal to 2,500. So 50 squared is equal to 2,500. So that's a square number that's even, that's greater than 1,000. So the answer I'm going to go for is 2,500. And obviously you've got your calculator, so you can try different numbers, square them, and see if your answer is going to be an even square number greater than 1,000. And if it is, then write it down. That's your answer. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 20. So question number 20 says, write down the square root of 10,000. So we want to find the square root of 10,000. So that's a 1 with 4 zeros. So we want to figure out which number do we multiply by itself to get 10,000. Now if we do 100 times 100, 100 times 100, well if I was doing 100 times 100, I would do 1 times 1 and then add on 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, and that would be equal to 10,000. So because 100 times 100 is 10,000, the square root of 10,000 would be 100. So the answer is 100, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 21. It says, write down the square root of 4 million. So we want to find the square root of 4 million. So it's a square root, and then that's a 4 followed by 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we want to find the square root of 4 million. So let's get our calculator and clear what's on the display and press the square root of 4 million. So the square root, and now we're underneath the square root sign, and we're going to type in 4 and then 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then press equals, and that's equal to 2,000. So the square root of 4 million is equal to 2,000, and that's it. So 2,000, because 2,000 times 2,000 is equal to 4 million. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 22. So question number 22, we've been asked to circle the number that is closest to the square root of 80. So we want to find which of these numbers is closest to the answer of the square root of 80. So let's consider our square numbers. In terms of 80, it's quite close to the square root of 81. So the square root of 81, and the square root of 81 would be equal to 9. And if we consider the next square number below that, the square root of 64 would be equal to 8. So the square root of 64 is equal to 8, and the square root of 81 is equal to 9. Now, the square root of 80 is just going to be slightly below the square root of 81. So it's just going to be slightly below 9. So that means our answer is going to be closest to 9 out of all of these numbers. And with the square root of 64 being equal to 8, it's going to be much closer to the square root of 81, which is equal to 9. So the square root of 80 is closest to 9. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 23. Okay, so question number 23 says, Kyle has been asked to find the same number to write in these boxes to make the multiplication correct. So he wants to find the same number to put in both of these boxes. And Kyle says there's two possible answers. So there's two possible pairs of numbers that he could put in here that it's the same number that if you multiply it together, you'll get 144. And the question asks is Kyle correct? And to explain our answer. Now I know that 12 times 12 is 144. I know that 12 multiplied by 12 is equal to 144. And we can check that on our calculator. We can get our calculator, and if we want to, we can type in 12 times 12 and press equals. And if you do 12 times 12, we get that's equal to 144. So that's one possible answer, that 12 times 12, 12 times 12 is equal to 144. So that's one possible option. But Kyle says there's two possible answers. He says there's another pair of numbers that if you multiply it by itself, you'll get 144. And he is correct, actually. If we do negative 12 multiplied by negative 12, negative 12 multiplied by negative 12 is also equal to 144. Because a negative times a negative is equal to a positive. So negative 12 times negative 12 would be 144. And we can check it in our calculator. If we type in negative 12 multiplied by negative 12, let's see what we get. So let's get our calculator, and we're going to type in negative 12, so negative 12 multiplied by negative 12 is equal to 144. So if you do negative 12 times negative 12, that's also equal to 144. So Kyle is correct, there is two possible options. You could do 12 times 12 or negative 12 times negative 12, and they would both give you an answer of 144. Now, I just want to show you something on the calculator. This is something that students often encounter and they wonder why it's the case. If we type in 12 squared, 12 times 12 is equal to 144. So we know that one already. But if we do negative 12 squared, now some students type this into their calculator. They type in negative 12 and then press squared, and then they press equals and say, oh, hold on, the answer is negative 144. Now we know that negative 12 times itself, well, negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 12 squared will be 144. So the calculator, if it sees this, actually thinks you're doing 12 squared and then making it negative. So if you want to type in negative 12 squared in your calculator, you've got to use brackets and type in negative 12, close brackets, and then squared. And then the calculator knows you want to square negative 12. So if you ever want to square negative in your calculator, make sure you're putting in brackets and then press equals and you get 144. So anyway, go back to the question. I just went off on a bit of a tangent there. We wanted to show that there was two possible options because Kyle said there's two possible answers and he's right. It could be 12 times 12 or negative 12 times negative 12. So he could write two different options in terms of the same number in those boxes to get a multiplication to give an answer of 144. So let's explain that. And I've just explained that yes, it could be 12 or negative 12. Okay, let's look at our last question, question number 24. Okay, so question number 24 says, Ben says the difference between two consecutive square numbers is always odd. Is Ben correct? You must show your workings. Okay, so let's write down our square numbers because we're looking for consecutive square numbers. Consecutive means one after another. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, 6 times 6 is 36, 7 times 7 is 49, 8 times 8 is 64, and so on. Now Ben's saying the difference between two consecutive square numbers is always odd. So let's find the difference between these square numbers. The difference between 1 and 4 is 3. The difference between 4 and 9 is 5. The difference between 9 and 16 is 7. The difference between 16 and 25 is 9. The difference between 25 and 36 is 11. The difference between 36 and 49 is equal to 13. The difference between 49 and 64 is 15. And as we can see, the difference between those consecutive square numbers is always odd. And that's it. So obviously 4 take away 1 is equal to 3. 9 take away 4 is equal to 5. 16 take away 9 is equal to 7, and so on. And that's it. So is Ben correct? No. So the difference is always odd. So that's it. So we've shown that Ben's not correct. Now, in terms of why that's the case, if we wanted to prove that, what we could do is we could think, well, if you're squaring an odd number, you're going to get an odd answer. If you're squaring an even number, you're going to get an even answer. And then if you take those away, an odd take away an even, or an even take away an odd, is always going to be odd. So that's why that's always the case. But this question didn't ask us to prove it, it just wanted us to show it, and we've shown it. And that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the Corbettmaths practice questions on square numbers, squaring numbers, square roots, and so on. And if you need any extra help on this topic, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to videos 226, 227, and 228, there's dedicated video tutorials there on square numbers, squaring numbers on a calculator, square roots, and things like that. Alternatively, you can scan this QR code. But anyway, in this video, I focused on the video solutions to the practice questions. I really hope you found this video useful. If you have found it useful, please like it and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.